You are working on a crochet pattern and suddenly you realize that something doesn't add up. There seems to be a mistake in the pattern that you are following. The item isn't turning out the way it should, or a stitch count doesn't seem to add up, or anything else that makes you think that this is not right. You have followed it and it doesn't work out. So what can you do? Of course, there never should be mistakes in patterns, but it just happens. Good patterns have been tested and tech edited, or both, but there are just so many crochet patterns all over the world, and the quality also varies a lot. So it's very possible that there is a mistake. But the first thing to ask yourself is this really a mistake? Or is there something that I have misunderstood or missed? When we are talking about English patterns, the very first thing is always to check if the pattern is written in US crochet terms or UK crochet terms. Those differ. As you probably know, the same name of a stitch is a different stitch in the two different terminologies. Designers should always mention which terminology is used, or which terminology, for instance, is used in a magazine, but especially in older books and magazines, that isn't always the case. They have often only been made for one audience, say only for English or only for Americans, and then therefore they don't even think about the fact that it later on would spread around the world. But if it's not mentioned, do you know how you know which it is? If it has the term single crochet, then it's always American terms. There is no single crochet in the UK crochet terminology. What is single crochet in American terms is double crochet in the British terms. So it skips straight away from chain, slip stitch, double crochet, no single crochet. So that's one way to check it. And if there are photographs, then you can of course look where they say what a stitch looks like. So that will also show you which terminology is being used. Not long ago somebody was writing to me about that their stitches were turning out different. And it was exactly this. It was a UK terminology thing talking about double crochets, and she was doing American double crochets. So every stitch in that case is twice as high as it should be. Also remember to check all the abbreviations, because those can also vary. For instance, yarn over, YO, can sometimes be yarn round hook, YRH. That sort of things you need to know. And then something that I have often come up with that people have thought there's something missing in the pattern is that there's a special stitch that is repeated right through the pattern, and it's explained before the actual pattern starts, and it may have its own abbreviation. So that could confuse you. So that's something to check as well. Then also read it carefully. Could it just be like a typo almost, like that the text has a mistake, like instead of saying a front post it says back post by accident, where everywhere else it says front post. Something that is very helpful nowadays is that lots of patterns have either photographs, step-by-step photographs, or a video. So what you can do also is to compare your work to those to see if they look the same. And another thing you need to check is that your gauge, your tension, is the same as in the pattern, if that's something that matters. In some items, like say scarves, the exact width may not matter. But if it's something that the size has to be correct, then your gauge has to be the same as in the pattern. Otherwise your work ends up too small or too big. But if after checking all these things, you are convinced that there is a mistake, then what? That depends on how you got the pattern or where it is. If it's in a book or a magazine, or if you ordered it from a website, or from the major platforms selling patterns, like Ravelry or Etsy. If it is a book or a magazine, check out if they have a website with mistakes, with corrections, an errata page or something, because they very often do. Many magazines also have an email address or even a phone number where you can contact them and ask about the pattern. If you bought the pattern from an individual seller, whichever way, then it should be easy enough to contact them and ask them and get help that way. Ravelry has a function that a designer can upload a new version of a pattern and then select that the new version goes to everybody who has bought it. That is very, very handy. Unfortunately, Etsy doesn't have that. There we have to send it individually if we want to. Because it's also good for the designer that they know that there has been a mistake in their pattern, so they can check it and fix it. If you don't find any help that way, is trying to see if you can fix the pattern yourself. That depends completely on what kind of a mistake it is. In some it's very easy, you just change some small thing. But if there's a major fault, for instance, with a stitch count, and you actually change the number of stitches, it may then make it harder to work further on, especially say it's lace or something that forms some kind of a designs. But that is one possibility. Another one that I see a lot is asking in a Facebook group or say crochet subreddit in Reddit or something like that in social media. Anytime when in a major crochet or craft or knitting group, somebody asks a question of how do I do this or what's wrong with this, they always get lots of answers. And while you may get wrong ones, but you normally get the right one as well. So that's one possibility. It's good to know that people normally are always willing to help. And because the crochet community worldwide is so big, there's always somebody who knows the answer. And one more point, something I have had to do a number of times. I don't often follow full patterns, but I am using instructions for different stitch patterns or various ways of doing things. And at times those may not be clear enough so that I would really understand what I would need to do. But I would already have found enough information so that I know what the thing is called and how to start and that sort of things. So what I will do then is that I will look for another pattern or another tutorial or blog instructions that might be clearer than the one I had already found. Because there's very little in crochet that would not have been explained many times. So, of course, I hope that you don't have patterns that have mistakes. But if and when it happens, I hope that some of these things that I listed will be useful. Till next time.